1968, Apollo 8 went to the moon. They didn't land, but they did circle the moon. And I was watching it on television, and at a certain point, one of the astronauts casually said, "We're going to turn the camera around and show you the Earth." And he did. And that was the first time I had ever seen the planet hanging in space like that. And it was profound.
I think that for me, like for many other people, it was quite a shock. I don't think any of us had any expectations about how it would give us such a different perspective. I think the focus had been, we're going to the stars, we're going to the other planets, and suddenly we look back at ourselves, and it seems to imply a new kind of self-awareness.
One of the astronauts said, when we originally went to the moon, our total focus was on the moon. We weren't thinking about looking back at the Earth. But now that we've done it, that may well have been the most important reason we went.
Oh, golly, I remember going through launch, which is an overwhelming experience. The engines cut off. I felt myself floating out of the seat. I floated over to the window, looked out, and we were coming up over the coast of Africa. And that's when it hit me. I'm in space. And, you know, I just got incredibly excited because it's something I had dreamed about since I was 6 years old.
I think you start out with this idea of what it's going to be like. And then when you do finally look at the Earth for the first time, you're overwhelmed by how much more beautiful it really is when you see it for real. It's just like it's this dynamic, alive place that you see glowing all the time.
I can only describe what I've seen. You know, looking down at the Earth and you see that line that separates day into night slowly moving across the planet. Thunderstorms on the horizon casting these long shadows as the sun sets. And then watching the Earth come alive. And you see the lights from the cities and the towns.
The events you see from space, like flying over thunderstorms, looking at them from the top, were spectacular. Like a fireworks show going on, and you're looking at it from the very top.
You know, shooting stars going below us, or you know, dancing curtains of auroras. It's just very hard to describe all the, you know, the colors, the beauty, the motion.
Awe, I think, is one of those words that you have a better understanding of once you see it, too. I felt like, you know, using the word awesome was totally appropriate when it came to describing what the planet looks like.
To have that experience of awe is, at least for the moment, to let go of yourself, to transcend the sense of separation. So it's not just that they were experiencing something other than them, but that they were at some very deep level integrating, realizing their interconnectedness with that beautiful blue-green ball.
And this is why the astronauts, particularly in the International Space Station, often say that much of their free time is filled with what they call Earth gazing, just staring out at the Earth. They can stare for hours because the changing scenery, the interactivity of the biosphere, all of this has an incredible aesthetic impact.
The beauty of seeing Earth as a planet, as opposed to being down here among it, is a wonderful experience to then start to get into what we call the big picture effect or the overview effect.
I was flying cross country from the East Coast to the West Coast in the 1970s. And I was looking out the window, and as I was looking down at the planet, the thought came to me, anyone living in a space settlement or living on the moon would always have an overview. They would see things that we know, but we don't experience, which is that the Earth is one system, we're all part of that system, and that there is a certain unity and a coherence to it all. And I immediately called it the overview effect.
You do, from that perspective, see the Earth as a planet. You see the sun as a star. We see the sun in the blue sky, but up there you see the sun in a black sky. So yeah, you are seeing it from a cosmic perspective.
You know, we see this amazing, indescribably beautiful planet. It looks like a living, breathing organism, but it also, at the same time, looks extremely fragile. Anybody else who's ever gone to space says the same thing, because it really is striking and it's really sobering to see this paper-thin layer and to realize that that little paper-thin layer is all that protects every living thing on Earth from death, basically, from the harshness of space.
Many of the great wisdom traditions of the Earth have pointed to what we're calling the overview effect. That is to say, they have realized this unity, this oneness of all life on Earth and of consciousness and awareness.
Within the Western tradition, I think it's quite new and quite shocking because there's been much more of a sense of separation. But if you look at other non-Western cultures, especially in Asia, the emphasis on those has always been on realization that the self and the world are not separate from each other, but that they're really interconnected, that the individual self and the species as a whole is a manifestation of the larger whole.
So it's no wonder that many people have likened the overview effect to a spiritual or meditative experience, although it's not exactly that. It's a cognitive shift that very often can produce a kind of meditative experience.
This view of the Earth from space, the whole Earth perspective, I think is the true symbol of this age. And I believe that what's going to happen is there's going to be a greater and greater interest in communicating this idea, because after all, it's key to our survival. We have to start acting as one species with one destiny. We are not going to survive if we don't do that.
We're seeing very clearly that if the Earth becomes sick, then we become sick. If the Earth dies, then we're going to die. People sense that something's wrong, but they're still struggling to go back and find out what the real roots of the problem are. And I think what we need to come to is the realization that it's not just fixing an economic or political system, but it's a basic worldview, a basic understanding of who we are that's at stake.
And a part of that is to come up with a new story, a new picture, a new way to approach this, and to shift our behaviors in such a way that it leads to a sustainable approach to our civilization as opposed to a destructive approach.
It is a fragile planet, and if we don't take care of it and we don't work together, then we are going to have bigger issues than we have now down the road.
On a grand scale, that's, we're basically all living in this one ecosystem called Earth. And everything that you do on one side of the ecosystem affects the other side. And that is a new way for living for most of humanity. When I was above the space station, looking down at the space station, looking down at the, against the Earth, and seeing this, amazing accomplishment, I was thinking, wow, there was 15 nations that worked together to build this amazing orbital complex in space. And if we can, take these 15 nations and do this amazing accomplishment, imagine what we can do by working together by setting aside our differences for a common goal to overcome some of the challenges facing our planet.